What happens when Hollywood's most beloved goofball collides with late-night TV's biggest ego? You're about to witness the most explosive celebrity meltdown ever caught on camera. Jack Black, the comedic powerhouse behind School of Rock, and Tenacious D walked into Jimmy Kimmel Live expecting a warm chat about his latest projects. What he got instead was a host seemingly hell-bent on publicly humiliating him. By the end of the night, security would be called, cameras shut off, and one of the industry's most universally adored figures would be escorted off set. It all started the moment Jack stepped onto the stage. Grinning and waving to the crowd with his usual larger-than-life energy, he immediately sensed something was off. The warmth that typically greets A-list guests was nowhere to be found. Jimmy Kimmel barely looked up from his cue cards, offering Jack a limp handshake. No hug, no banter, no smile. "Jack Black, everyone," Jimmy muttered flatly. The audience clapped, but something felt wrong. The host's signature charm was missing, replaced by a mechanical monotone. Jack, ever the pro, laughed it off and took his seat, blissfully unaware of the brewing storm. Then came the first blow. "So, Jack, thanks for being here," Jimmy said, a razor's edge beneath his voice. "I've got to ask, and I think America wants to know. When did being loud and obnoxious become a substitute for actual talent?" The studio froze. A ripple of stunned silence overtook the crowd. Was this a joke? A roast? Or had Jimmy just blindsided one of the most likable figures in Hollywood? Jack blinked, his smile faltered. Then, with a nervous chuckle, "Wow, Jimmy. Starting strong tonight. I mean, I've been loud and obnoxious since I was 12, so I guess the talent part came later. You'd have to ask my fans about that one." But Jimmy wasn't letting up. "Your fans, right?" he said, leaning in. "Are they mostly kids who don't know any better? Or adults who never grew up?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't playful ribbing. This felt mean. Backstage, Jack's publicist looked like she might faint. Jack's demeanor shifted. The easygoing grin gave way to a more measured tone. "Jimmy, I'm not sure what's going on here. If I did something to upset you, maybe we talk about it off camera. This feels more like an ambush than an interview." Jimmy scoffed. "Ambush? Jack, you're a public figure. If you can't handle basic questions about your career, maybe you shouldn't be doing press at all." Shh. The tension was undeniable, even. Jimmy's band leader looked visibly uncomfortable, but Jack wasn't going to take it lying down. "Basic questions?" he shot back, voice rising. "You just asked if my fans are dumb kids or emotionally stunted adults. That's not journalism. That's an insult." Jimmy shrugged, clearly relishing the moment. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Your career's built on being the loud, funny, fat guy. How long did you think that could last?" The audience gasped. Now Jack was visibly furious. The jovial jester had vanished, replaced by a man barely containing his rage. "You know what, Jimmy?" he said, voice cold and steady. "I've always been respectful to you. I've come on your show, promoted my work, played along with your sketches. Never once have I been anything but professional. So let me ask you, what the hell is your problem with me?" Jimmy leaned back, a smug grin creeping across his face. "My problem, Jack, is that people like you have made entertainment a joke. You don't get roles because you're good. You get them because you're a meme. You don't make music because you're talented. You make it because it's funny. It's funny watching a fat guy pretend to be a rock star." The studio went dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to freeze, as if stunned by the weight of Jimmy's words. Jack stared at him motionless, his fists clenched on the armrests, the tension in his knuckles clear under the stage lights. "A meme?" Jack echoed slowly, each syllable deliberate. "Jimmy, I've been acting professionally for over 20 years. I've starred in critically acclaimed films. I've voiced characters that kids around the world grew up with. And yes, I've made people laugh. That's my job. That's what I love doing." He leaned in slightly, eyes narrowing. "And you're sitting here telling me that's worthless?" Jimmy didn't flinch. "I'm telling you it's not real talent," he shot back. "Anyone can be loud and weird. Real entertainers have skill." "Real entertainers?" Jack repeated, his voice laced with disdain. "You mean like late-night hosts who toss softball questions at celebrities plugging their latest streaming? Deal? That kind of real?" A murmur rippled through the audience. They could feel it. This wasn't just awkward. It was unraveling. Jimmy's face darkened. "At least I don't rely on fat jokes and cartoon voices to stay relevant," he snapped. "I actually have to be clever." Jack laughed, sharp and hollow. "Clever?" he echoed. "Jimmy, half your monologue is just reading mean tweets. The other half is recycled political jokes written by people funnier than you. When's the last time you said anything original? When's the last time you punched up instead of down, the mask Jimmy wore every night, the smiling, self-deprecating persona, began to slip, his lips pressed into a thin line? "You know what your problem is, Jack," he said, voice cold. "You think people respect you because they laugh, but they don't. They laugh at you because you're a joke." That hit like a punch. Jack froze. The room held its breath. "A joke?" Jack repeated, his tone low and dangerous now. "You want to talk about jokes, Jimmy? A real joke is a guy who built his entire career riding the coattails of more talented people. A real joke is sitting behind a desk every night pretending to be funnier than the guests he's lucky enough to book. A real joke is peaking as a sidekick on a radio show and somehow convincing a network you could carry your own. The audience was completely still. Even the band had gone silent. You want to talk about respect?" Jack continued, rising from his chair. "I respect my craft. I respect my fans. I respect every cast and crew member I've ever worked with. But I don't respect bullies. And that's exactly what you are. You punch down for laughs. And when someone finally calls you on it, you play the victim?" Jimmy stood too, trying to reclaim control. "Jack, I think we're getting a little off track here. Why don't we talk about your new movie?" "Oh, no," Jack said, shaking his head. "You don't get to attack me for 10 minutes and then pivot like this is just another interview. You turned this into a spectacle. Don't act surprised that I'm not just rolling with it." He stepped forward, now pacing slightly, towering over the desk. "You want to know the difference between us, Jimmy?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension. "When I'm on screen, people laugh with me. When you're on screen, they're laughing at the person you're tearing down. I build joy. You sell cruelty and call it wit." Jimmy's jaw clenched. "You create noise, Jack. That's all you do. You're loud, you're obnoxious, and you confuse that with talent." Jack smiled. "There it is again," he said softly. "That condescension you hide behind punchlines. But the truth is, Jimmy, you've mistaken cynicism for cleverness. You tear people down because deep down, you're terrified you'd never stand next to them otherwise." The producers were, now off camera, frantically signaling to cut to commercial. But it was too late. The meltdown had gone nuclear. And it was all on tape. Jack pointed a steady finger at Jimmy. "Loud and obnoxious," he repeated, his voice calm but razor-sharp. You keep saying those words like they're insults. You know what's actually insulting? A talk show host so insecure in his own lack of talent, he has to tear down his guests just to feel significant. The atmosphere in the studio was electric. They were now face to face, standing on opposite sides of Jimmy's desk, two titans locked in a standoff. Neither blinked, neither budged. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether they were watching live television history or a career implosion in real time. You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Jack pressed, eyes locked on Jimmy's. Because you've got the desk, the writers, the studio. You think this platform makes you special, but you're not. You're just a bully with a microphone. Jimmy's composure shattered. His voice rose, sharp and bitter. And you're a has-been clinging to nostalgia. Your best work was 20 years ago. You've been riding that wave ever since. Jack flinched, just slightly, as the words landed. Then his jaw tightened, his fury returning with renewed force. A has-been? He said, voice rising. Jimmy, I'm still making movies, still making music, still creating things that bring people joy. What are you making? Besides misery and second-rate jokes at other people's expense? Jimmy fired back. I'm making television, Jack. Real television. Not whatever cartoon junk you're selling to kids. Jack blinked, stunned, then let out a low, incredulous laugh. Cartoon junk? He echoed, voice dripping with contempt. You mean the films that gross hundreds of millions? The characters that live in people's hearts for years? The songs that parents and kids sing together? That cartoon junk? Jimmy, floundering now, lashed out. Box office doesn't equal quality, Jack. McDonald's sells billions of burgers. That doesn't make it good food. Jack's voice boomed now, echoing off the walls. Did you just compare my work to McDonald's? He stepped forward. Is that really how disconnected you are? Do you think the millions of people who love what I do are just stupid? That they can't tell the difference between something that makes them happy and something that tears them down? The confrontation had spiraled far beyond the boundaries of any scheduled segment. The producers were waving frantically from the wings. Cameras kept rolling. Jimmy's voice, now openly hostile, cut back in. I think you built a career being the class clown, and now you're mad the rest of us grew up. That struck deep. Jack's expression shifted through a storm of emotions. Hurt, disbelief, and then cold, focused rage. Grew up, Jack repeated, his voice low but commanding. The whole studio went silent. Even Jimmy seemed momentarily stunned. You think cruelty is maturity? You think making people feel small makes you clever? You think mocking someone's joy is a sign of sophistication? That's not growing up, Jimmy. That's just becoming everything that's wrong with this business. Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but Jack raised a hand. No, he said, steel in his tone. I'm not finished. Now his voice filled the room, resonating with clarity and conviction. You want to know what growing up really looks like? It's using your platform to lift people up, not cut them down. It's celebrating joy, not mocking it. It's realizing that just because you don't get something doesn't mean it has no value. The studio was deathly quiet, the tension thick and unrelenting. Even Jimmy had nothing to say. Jack's voice softened but didn't lose its power. I came here tonight to talk about the things I love, to make people laugh, to have a good time. And instead, he looked down for a beat, then back up at Jimmy, fire still in his eyes. I walked into an ambush, but I won't let you twist what I do into something cheap, because what I do matters, to me and to millions of others. And the real joke, Jimmy, Jack leaned in just slightly. Is that you still think punching down makes you look big? Jack, I walked into an ambush by someone who honestly believes cruelty is comedy. Well, let me be clear, Jimmy. You're not funny. You're just mean. Jack's words echoed through the studio like a thunderclap. Jimmy's face twisted with rage. The warm, rehearsed smile of the charming late-night host was gone, shattered. What remained was something raw, petty, and bitter. Jimmy, voice shaking. You know what, Jack? You're right. I'm not funny. But at least I'm not pathetic. I don't have to dress up like a cartoon character and make goofy voices just to get attention. Jack stared at him, unmoving. Then, with unnerving calm, Jack, do you even hear yourself? You're mocking me. For bringing joy to people. For making kids laugh. For giving families something to share. You're acting like entertainment is. Some zero-sum game. Like if people love what I do, it somehow takes something away from you. Jimmy, snapping. This isn't about success, Jack. It's about dignity. It's about having self-respect. Jack's voice rose incredulous. Jack, self-respect? Jimmy, your entire brand is humiliating people who can't fight back. You read mean tweets for ratings. You mock politicians, entertainers, anyone who stumbles into your spotlight. And you're going to lecture me about dignity. The audience was riveted, phones raised, capturing every second. The control room was in chaos. Producers waved, gestured, cutthroat motions flying. But the cameras stayed live. Jimmy, at least when I mock people, I'm honest about it. I don't pretend to be some squeaky clean family act while I'm doing it. Jack let out a cold, humorless laugh. Jack, wholesome? Jimmy, I'm a rock and roll guy who happens to make movies kids love. I drink beer. I cuss like a sailor. I play loud music. But you know what I don't do? I don't use my platform to punch down. I don't humiliate people to boost my ego. Jimmy's fists clenched. He was trembling now. Jimmy, you think you're better than everyone. You think because you make people laugh, you're some kind of saint. Jack, I'm not a saint. I'm just a guy who tries to make people happy. And you, pause, you make people miserable. So tell me, Jimmy, which one of us is actually contributing something to this world? That question landed like a hammer. Jimmy's face went red, then a deep, furious purple. He exploded. Jimmy, shouting. Contribute? Contribute? Jack, you're a joke. A fat, loud, obnoxious joke. The only reason anyone even notices you is because you're willing to humiliate yourself for a paycheck. A collective gasp swept through the studio. Several audience members stood. Shock rippled like electricity. Jack went still. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but somehow it carried through every inch of the space. Jack, there it is. He nodded slowly. Eyes locked on Jimmy. That's the real you, isn't it? The guy who thinks tearing people down makes him important. The guy who confuses cruelty for cleverness. Jimmy opened his mouth, perhaps to retreat. But pride wouldn't let him. He leaned in instead. Jimmy, I'm being honest. Someone has to tell you the truth. Jack's eyes narrowed. His voice, now rising again, cut through the room like a blade. Jack, you want to talk truth? Fine. Beat. Let's really talk. You want the truth, Jimmy? Fine, here it is. Jack stepped forward, calm but deliberate, each word sharpened by purpose. I've spent my entire career trying to make people smile. I've made movies families can watch together. I've made music that lifts spirits. Every chance I've had, I've used to spread a little joy, a little hope." He took another step, commanding the space now. "And you've done the opposite. Night after night, you sit behind that desk and tear people down. You mock their looks, their failures, their choices. You turned cruelty into a performance and called it wit." Jimmy shifted, his smirk faltering. "I'm a comedian," he said, but even he didn't seem to believe it. "No," Jack said. "You're a bully. Comedians make people laugh. Bullies make people hurt. And you, Jimmy Kimmel, are the biggest bully on television." The room fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, their quiet hum the only sound in the studio. Jimmy's face drained of color. His hands gripped the desk. "You know what's really sad?" Jack said, and his voice softened, not out of weakness, but with a kind of mournful clarity. "You could have been more than this. You had the stage, the reach, the respect. You could have used all of it to lift people up. But you chose the low road. You chose to be petty. You chose to be mean." "Get out!" Jimmy snapped suddenly, his voice cracking. Jack blinked. "What? I said get out!" Jimmy shouted. "This is my show." Jack stared at him. Then slowly he nodded. "I'll leave. Not because you told me to, but because I don't want to be here. I don't want to be part of this circus." He turned to the audience, his voice steady and clear. "I'm sorry you had to witness this. I came here to share some stories, to talk about things I love, maybe get a few laughs. Instead, you saw what happens when cruelty gets mistaken for entertainment." Jimmy was now signaling to his producers. Security emerged from the wings. "Escort him out!" Jimmy barked. Jack looked at the guards and laughed, genuinely this time. "Really, Jimmy? After 20 minutes of attacks, I'm the one getting thrown out? All I did was stand up for myself." "You're a troublemaker," Jimmy fired back. "You came here and blew everything up." "I blew it up?" Jack's voice rose, not in anger, but in disbelief. "Jimmy, you detonated this the second I walked on stage. All I did was refuse to roll over." The guards moved in, uneasy. Jack turned to them. "It's all right. I'll go. Not because I have to, because I want to." He faced Jimmy one final time. "And you know what? I feel sorry for you. Sorry that bitterness is all you have left. Sorry that you've mistaken spite for substance. You had the chance to create joy, and instead you chose pain." Jack turned to walk off, then stopped and looked around the studio. "And I feel sorry for everyone here who has to work under someone who thinks cruelty is comedy." "Just go!" Jimmy screamed, voice cracking into a whimper. Jack smiled, genuinely, warmly. "Gladly, Jimmy, gladly." He walked off the set, security in tow, leaving a studio plunged in stunned silence. Jimmy stood frozen, breath ragged, eyes glassy. The cameras were still rolling, capturing the most raw, unscripted moment of his career. No applause, no laughter, just quiet. The producers scrambled behind the scenes, but it was too late. In less than half an hour, Jimmy Kimmel had confirmed every charge Jack had leveled at him, and Jack Black had revealed a depth no one expected. When the lights dimmed and the cameras finally cut, one thing was certain. This night would be remembered long after the stage had gone dark. So, what do you think? Did Jack go too far? Or was he right to push back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this hit, home subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next.